So, as many of you know, I've been exploring this idea of the unification of religion as not plural, in the last couple of years, and kind of reading things accordingly and just trying to open to those ideas and to find them and understand them and discover them within the different scriptures of different traditions. And I've been going through the Philokalia in the last year or so, a little over a year, I guess. Probably more like 2 or 3 years, actually, come to think of it. And looking at different ideas in there. And really what I've been focusing on lately as an interest of mine is this idea of stilling the mind, of stopping thought, and having access to yourself beyond thought. Eckhart Tolle talks about our addiction to thinking and how if you're able to stop the act of thinking, that you have available to you a realm of knowledge that dwarfs what is available to the thinking mind. And I was doing experiments in my own practice around this idea of observing the mind, but also during thinking, when you have that inner dialogue or that inner voice, and when you're trying to work out a problem, you have these conversations going on. At least I do, and I hope others do as well. But in pondering and contemplating on these kinds of things, it really appeared to me to be quite humorous that in my mind I would break myself into two people, to the speaker and the listener. Since both of them are sourced in me, what is the speaker going to tell me in my mind, the thinker? What's that going to reveal to me that I, the listener, the observer of mind, don't already know? And that being the case, how is that information as it exists before it's kind of sorted through the thinker and the listener? How is it available? And Eckhart Tolle talks about it being spontaneously available. Ramana Maharshi also mentions that. Anyway, within Christianity, within the Philokalia here, I was reading from St. Peter of Damascus. And there's actually three little blocks of his writing that are interesting. I'm only going to cover one tonight. And it's about this watchfulness and about this silencing the mind and stepping before it. Now, he uses the word devil in here because it's a Christian writing. I'm going to replace that, and if it offends you, just use the word devil. I don't mind. But for me, the devil is indicative of ego. It is the ego that is the veil between us and the divine. That idea of self, the little fenced-in white picket fence area that we call ours, myself, where I'm in charge and I make the rules and I do the thinking and I do the living and day to day. And that ego is elusive. It doesn't really have any substance to it. But so I equate that with the Christian devil. And he also mentions the demons in here. And to me, I'm going to talk about demons instead as samskaras from the Hindu tradition, which are basically your past experiences, past deeds, and the momentum that they have from your habit and your way of living, and from the, I guess, kind of habitual way that we actually exist in the world, where we have automatic thought patterns that are activated by current senses, current experience. And we don't think much about it, which is why many of the sages tell us we have to wake up, because we're sort of in this stupor of habit in life. All right, so that being said, our brother says, as St. John of Damascus says, without attentiveness, and attentiveness is that watchfulness of mind. In Ramana Maharshi's language, it's being aware of awareness. As St. John of Damascus says, without attentiveness and watchfulness of the intellect, we cannot be saved and rescued from the devil, from our ego, who walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, right? Because the ego is eternally insecure because of its no true existence. And so it's always collecting information. We are always collecting information as long as we're identified with ego, to build up our own sense of self, to strengthen our own sense of identity, to grab onto things that make us real, as it were. So the devil, the mind, the ego, walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. For this reason, the Lord often said to his disciple, watch and pray, for you do not know at what hour your Lord is coming. Through them, he was giving a warning to us all about the remembrance of death, so that we should be prepared to offer a defense grounded in works and attentiveness that will be acceptable to God. For the demons, our samskaras and bad habits of the past, as St. Hilarion has said, are immaterial and sleepless, concerned only to fight against us and to destroy our souls through word, act, and thought. Now that's the essence of truth, word, act, and thought. You see, the world appears dual to us because our word, our action, and our thinking often are three different directions, three different sets of realities. And it's very important, if you're a spiritual seeker, to align those so that what you say, what you think, and what you do are in support of one another, so that you're not a hypocrite. So you're not a smugly self-righteous person. So it's very important to get those things into line. We lack a similar persistence and concern ourselves now with our comfort and with our ephemeral opinion. That's the ego self. We're just looking to be comfortable, just looking to get through life, entertaining ourselves constantly, as we go along, and creating these ephemeral opinions, these ideas of what reality is, without really any ability to understand or think about them, because we're lost in the shallowness of existence. We are not in the least interested in examining our life, so that our intellect may develop the habit of so doing, and may give attention to itself unremittingly, to give for this inner self, this divine self, that which you are when your mind and the world around you and society and all of your own thinking aren't telling you what you are. In that silence of mind is manifest who you are. So here we see, even in the Christian scripture, of course, couched in different words and different mythologies, but we see the same technique, this very important aspect of shutting down the particular thought function of the mind and coming to a silent mind. And in that silent mind, we become aware, according to many of the sages, we become aware of a universal knowledge, the kind of knowledge that you use when you move your finger, where you just think finger move and the finger moves. That's what I would call a divine knowledge, just as an example, not as a real thing, but that divine knowledge, which means all of the effort that's being done, all of the, I don't know the biology of it, which is the astounding thing, that I'm able to so fully function without knowing any of the biology of it. I call that divine knowledge. That knowledge is accessible to me in the moment without having to reference it or look it up like you do with head knowledge, where you have to find a reference and a relation and go and get that, try and remember that piece of information. But with divine knowledge, this experience of having this infinite knowledge that isn't meted out in small pieces through mind, through the thought process, which is utterly unnecessary and really, I think, exists purely for our own entertainment. But that, like this, we have this ability to access spontaneous knowledge, an infinite amount of it that lies deep within us. That is of our very nature, that Satchitananda that the Hindus speak of, the Vedantists, that existence, that intelligence, and that love, unchanging and absolute in its entirety, perfected as our very center, the part of us that doesn't change and doesn't move, the source of the I, but the ego is what makes the I specific. So this I is a universal I, the divine, if you will, that image of God that the Christians say that was planted within us at our creation. So all of these mythologies and ideals coming together and painting a unified picture, one that isn't broken into separate religions, a knowledge of truth which is universal and the ownership of all mankind, belongs to every one of us, equally accessible regardless of culture, country, time, religion, philosophy, that there is a unity that binds us all together. Its nature, again, is our own nature, the nature of love.